Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here in Barcelona to such an esteemed group of colleagues. And please forgive me if I cannot do much more than to sell you some old hats. Some time ago, I was invited by a major American art academy to speak there to the art students. And on the way there, I was thinking, I want to speak about how content drives artists. And 10 minutes into my speech, I realized I had lost the audience. Half of them were on their iPhone, the other one half asleep. And I said, well, should I go through this painful experience another 50 minutes? And I decided to stop it. And I said, well, I guess you have something else expected from me. And in a way, it was like a wake-up call. And then some young artist said to me, yes, actually, we came here to listen and to learn how to become the next Jeff Koons. And I said, okay, you want to speak about the market, you want to speak about the career and about success. And I had the attention of all these young artists, and it was a lively discussion up to the end. It kind of disappointed me a bit, and I was thinking, has time changed so much that the role of the gallery and the role of the art dealer, the role of the advisor is a totally different one? And I was thinking, maybe of the good old days where the relationship between an artist and a gallerist was something about content, about the art itself. But then, wait a minute, I think maybe time have not changed so much. Recently, I was reading an interesting book about the German Renaissance painter Lucas Cranach. And we all know he painted Martin Luther. And if somebody would have asked me before I read this book how many portraits Cranach painted of Luther, I would have said, I don't know what you think, but 8, 10. I remember the one at the National Gallery in Washington, or at the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna, the one in Basel. No, he painted 500 portraits of Luther. How come? He was an incredible genius of an artist, of course, but also of an art dealer. He was the first, maybe not the first, I cannot prove this, but he was one of the first, dealer artists unisono. He went that far that he went to the Duke of Saxony and said, I would like to have a monopoly on portraits of Luther. And the Duke of Saxony gave it to him. He said, you are the only one who are allowed to paint Luther. Albrecht Dürer, who lived at the same time, who was dying to paint Luther, he was not allowed to, because all his life, Cranach never allowed to Dürer to paint him. You might say, okay, this was all about, believing in the reformist movement, and history books was very busy, always writing that Cranach was this great believer in the reformist, that he was so close to Luther, that he was the only one who felt he had the monopoly. He had to have it. But now we learn more about it. We have found letters, and this book really reveals this in an interesting way. He even went out of his way to paint and portrait the enemies of Luther. He was doing the portrait of the Duke of Brandenburg and the Duke of Alba, who were staunchly Catholics. For him, it was really also a strong business decision. He said, okay, I want to make a career of this, and I want to make sure that the next generation will have still their income through what I was doing. So he even gave the right of painting these portraits of Luther to his son, which is Cranach the Younger, and of course to all his workshop, and this ends up to this incredible number of 500 portraits, which are kind of dedicated to this great artist. Of course, today when we go to the museums, we don't think about this tragedy. We don't think about this marketing genius. We think only about the great artist. We are astounded and overwhelmed when we see these incredible portraits. And I haven't really studied this all enough, but I guess we would find maybe some other examples of artists who became their own great art dealer. Actually, talking of Dürer, he was by far not on the same level than Cranach, who did it with this determination, really kind of becoming his best representative, his best dealer of his own work, and far beyond his own generation. But even Dürer kind of became quite clever in promoting his own work. And he did his etchings, and when some of the etchings didn't sell so well, he made sure that there is nothing else available. And then when there was nothing available, there was interest finally for these etchings, and the market started to react. All things we do know very well. So when we think of this kind of good old days, then we kind of see that our role of promoting an artist and using every clever idea which is allowed to kind of use in promoting an artist, it was not invented in the last 30 years. We're always talking about how many things have changed in the last 30 years, and many have. And I opened my gallery more than 33 years ago now. And I always say that I've seen the art market move from the ivory tower to the center of life. It was a small group of galleries in different cities across Europe. Everybody knew everyone. When I think Cologne was very important at the time. There were the German collectors were around this area of North Rhine-Westphalia. There were these great dealers, Paul Menz and Michael Werner. There was Springer in Berlin and Neuendorf in Hamburg, and of course Friedrich in Munich, who then went to America and opened and founded the Dia Art Foundation. So it was this handful of galleries. There was, Yvon Lambert in Paris, and Daniel Tremblay, and Anthony Dauphin, and Waddington, and Annelie Judah in London. So you could almost name them on a couple of hands. And it was a time where it felt pioneering, because many things were a new experience. There was the beginning of the art fairs. Cologne was the first place in 1967. In 1969, Joseph Beuys made an installation at the Cologne Art Fair, and it was this famous piece, Rudel, the back, which we all know from the Kassel Museum. And René Bloch, who was one of the legendary dealers at the time, he sold it for 110,000 Deutschmarks, which is barely 60,000 euros. It was the biggest price ever paid at the time in Europe for contemporary art, the biggest price for a German artist, which was Joseph Beuys at the time. And it didn't even make the headlines, because art was not there to make headlines. It was noticed, of course. It was a big excitement. I can imagine. I was not there, but this was the atmosphere. This was where I think the German art market started, and where Europe was standing. America was always a bit more advanced. There was, of course, Leo Castelli, and I had the great fortune to meet Leo very early on, because he loved opera and music, and he used to come to Salzburg in August every year, the end of August, for a few days before he went on to Italy, to Venice, with Iliana Sonnabend, his ex-wife, and great gallerist. And of course, he came to my small gallery, which I just had opened there, and for me it was, of course, meeting the Pope. And he was, and he spoke about America, and he spoke about New York, and he spoke about how New York was, of course, always ahead its time. It kind of defined the new century in art marketing. And he was talking about Europe, and he was talking a few times, and I do remember this very well, of having a gallery in Europe. And he always spoke about Iliana having this gallery in Paris and showing Warhol and Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns and Liechtenstein in Europe. And he wanted to have his gallery in Germany, because he started to sell to Peter Ludwig, to Ströer. He had these incredible German collectors who came to New York, who wanted to buy all of this generation of American artists. And then he said, well, but he thought of doing it differently at the time. And he decided to work very closely with a group of European galleries. There was Bruno Bischofberger in Zurich. There was Tremblay in Paris. There was Lucio Amelio in Italy, in Naples. And he made sure that the colleagues were happy, that they could get access to some of the great American artists, that they could have exhibitions. They could have access directly to the studio and really develop a relationship and to make their own decisions with the artist, what would be the best thing for Naples versus Paris. And so he built this group of colleagues and galleries, which he kind of gave this incredibly important access to some of the most important artists of its time. America somehow took over, got into the lead since Rauschenberg won the Great Prize in Venice in 1964. And for me, it was, an incredible blessing to meet him, because I just had started my first small gallery in Salzburg in 1983. I wanted to become an artist before. I was determined to meet boys. I went to Germany, realized soon that I'm really lacking talent for this, but insisted to become an intern at the boys' studio, and it was granted to me, so I lived in Düsseldorf, and then in 1982 he took me to Berlin. There was this legendary exhibition, Zeitgeist, which changed many things in Europe. It was the first time that between Andy Warhol's work and Joseph Beuys' towering installation in the center of the Gropius Bau, a new generation of artists arrived. American painters like Eric Fischl and Francesco Clemente from Italy, but also George Baselitz and many more. And it was Norman Rosenthal who kind of made this kind of time-changing exhibition. And I was this little intern there. I always said I was schlepping the beer. And then Kassel just followed. So boys took me to Kassel, and I was able to help to do these installations. And then I decided to go back to Austria and to open my own space. And I remember very well when I said goodbye to Joseph Beuys, he took me into his office, not office, into this room. And then he said, well, you worked very hard for me for the last 10 months, and I was not able to really pay you, but can I do something for you? And I said, actually, Joseph, yes, 2 things you have to do for me, please. I'm going back to Austria, I'm opening my gallery, and I would like to open with an exhibition of your work. He said, okay, well, that's very ambitious. Well, let's see. And he said, and what else? And then he said, well, and I want to go to America, and I want to meet Andy Warhol. And then he took a little napkin and he said, dear Andy, please meet this talented young man. And this was my ticket to America. And so I was able to open this gallery without any knowledge, without any experience, as I never had worked in a gallery before, with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of naivete, and was lucky to kind of go to America, meet Warhol, and through Warhol meet Basquiat, and had these very early exhibitions of Basquiat and Haring in Salzburg in 1983, 1984, and also meet Leo Castelli, who became an incredible mentor, and I was one of these kind of, galleries he kind of fed it with material out of New York, and I was able to show Rauschenberg then in 1985 in this tiny little gallery in Austria. It was like over in US Army shop where they sold kind of American jeans and jackets, and it was one room which was like hardly a third of this room here, and with a low ceiling. And I remember one day Basquiat was sending me over a painting which actually fit exactly the wall. We measured the wall, everything was fine. But then I didn't realize that he was not painting the painting on canvas, he did it on wood. So we were stuck in the staircase, and I almost cried because I couldn't show the masterpiece. I went to the local museum in Salzburg and I said, I have this incredible artist here, and I cannot show this painting, but I have some drawings. Would you please show the painting? They looked at it and said, well, I think not for us. So I think all of this experience of totally unprofessional attempt to the business, but also this was the times. I think it was all forgiven. I think there was the relationship between a gallery and an artist, and there was hardly a market, so artists also forgave you that you were not able to sell. Beuys would not even expect that I would sell one of these drawings. He gave me this beautiful drawings exhibition, and when the exhibition was over, I took everything back in this portfolio and took the night train to Düsseldorf and brought it back to him, sadly. But somehow the 80s have already started to change the market, and America, of course, was in the lead, as it was so often in these periods. And, somehow the art world came out of this ivory tower. There was, it started to have an audience because, gallery openings were family affairs, at least in Europe, maybe not in America, I cannot say this, but even in Paris, I remember we would go to Paris with one of the artists. I remember when Basquiat was showing a Divan Lambert in Paris, of course I went there with the night train to Paris, and it was the family who met. There were like 25 people at this opening, and afterwards you had kind of some bad French food. And sorry, nothing against French food. It was just modest French food, let's put it this way. But the 80s did change something and kind of not reinvented the model, but made it come out of this family affair into kind of the public eye. And media started to be interested in artists, maybe not only in the content of an artist, but in the market and what artists can do for society. And I think it was rather fascinating to go through these different periods of time and see how artists became really important part of society. England in Europe was definitely the front runner. It invented the Turner Prize. The Turner Prize became a media event, and artists became media stars. This was something we haven't had before. They gave interviews, and they were not only on the culture pages of the English newspapers, but also they were on, Talk of Town, and soon they started to write about it, what artists are doing, what artists are thinking. They were asking them about their political views, and they were really invited to kind of be a force. And galleries were always there to basically be there to help them to achieve their goal. I think we are here to help them to create their universe, to nurture them and to protect them also. We always get very criticized in this industry, not by art critics, but people who criticize the system itself, what galleries are standing for. And it's always said that galleries have this incredible influence, and galleries are able to create artists. And we do all know that this is not the truth, that we are able to kind of maybe make other people believe what is great, and we are able maybe to make other people buy what we think is a great piece of art. But I always say we can do all these things. We can think of incredible ideas, and we can think of a marketing plan and put everything on the paper and sit with the artist and see, if we do this, the reaction will be that, and if you move there, from there you move there, and then you step up the career ladder. And reality is different, because there's one thing which is always the one thing we know very well. We cannot do the masterpiece. The masterpiece is still done by the artist on his own, in his studio, very much alone. He has to come up with the thought-provoking ideas. He has to come up with a constant surprise to us. We are the first part of the audience. And he has to always reinvent himself. So whatever we think we can do to make an artist a star or to have success and to sell with very high numbers, at the end of the day, it's the artist himself who very alone in his studio, on his own, can do this. He has to create the masterpiece. And but we can do a lot. We can, and this also has not changed so much. All these ideas of, marketing and many things did change, and media did change many things, but nothing, in my belief, and you might be a totally different opinion, nothing in its kind of, basic columns. I think art is created by talented people in their studio on their own. We are here to help them to kind of create their universe, and we have to be careful not to limit their vision. but you cannot do it for them. And it's an incredible privilege to be close to artists and to help them go their way. And we can do many mistakes and we can do things right. There is no golden way, I think, and everybody has to find its own way. When I was kind of happy to have the trust of so many great artists back then in the 80s, I realized that Salzburg maybe is not the center of the world, and I would like to move a little bit closer, where I would just grow my audience, not necessarily to sell more art, but to have an audience. What I was really missing back then in the 80s in my first galleries, that I didn't have enough people just coming every day. I was rather successful in creating a new group of collectors, and sometimes I say, if I would be a bit more modest, I could just take a circle of 1 mile around my gallery in Salzburg and I could run a gallery, because there are enough collectors there who are buying art. But I really wanted a bigger audience. I felt one day I was going to see Baselitz, and I had my first exhibition with George Baselitz in 1984, and in maybe 1987 or so I went to the studio, and he showed me some works he had prepared for an exhibition. And then I saw some other works, and I said, but George, why I can't have those works? This is the ones I want. They said, oh, no, they are going to London. And I got the message. I said, okay, so there are the centers in the world who have a certain privilege in getting the better works. And this really made me to decide and move on, and I was thinking, which city I could go. Everybody, the artists always said to me, go to Vienna, because Salzburg is awesome, but Vienna is great, or go to Berlin. And I said to myself, no, I want to go to Paris. Paris was the city of Kahnweiler and Picasso and Berggruen, Max Ernst and Iliana Sonnabend and Rauschenberg. And so that's the reason I ended up in Paris. And of course, this was a big step. You didn't speak a word of French. I hardly speak it now. And it was an incredible experience. And I had my first gallery, which we are still in there, in the Marais. But here I felt, after a couple of years of very successful exhibitions, that I'm starting to limit again the vision of my artists. Anthony Gormley prepared an exhibition for the space in Paris, and one sculpture was 4 tons. So when it arrived there, our static engineers, they said, we tried to get it into the space and it was not possible. We tried to put some columns underneath. At the end, we had to decide, and it was very, very difficult not to show this sculpture. And of course, the artist was disappointed. And another time, Anselm Kiefer prepared me a painting which was 4 by 5 meters. And I came to the studio and I said, well, Anselm, this is an amazing painting. And I just saw this, I just knew it will not go through the entrance. And I said to him, but this is very large. I don't think we can get it in. He said, but excuse me, I know I have the plan of the gallery. This fits into the front wall. I said, yes, it does. But how do we get it in? And he cut the painting in 2. It was the only way to get it in. And he has done it, several times. We sold it to a German museum. And when I was invited, when the museum put it onto their wall, and there was a speech, and then some art historian tried to explain, this big cut in the middle. And I was staying there, I said, well, should I just say something? I didn't. I let the Germans believe that this was a very important content-driven decision by the artist. But at the end of the day, this kind of made me grow, because I said, if I have these experiences, one after the other, I just need a bigger space. And starting in Paris to look for this space, at first I thought, should it be 2,000 square meters, or what would be the great space? I invited some artists, I said, can we discuss it? What would be a space you would like? Of course, don't ask Anselm Kiefer, because everything I showed him, he said, oh God, you just go from small to medium small. And this kind of made me find this, I think, incredible space in the northeast of Paris, in Pantin. And in a way, I just thought I followed the needs of the artist. Of course, it was also described as megalomaniac and too big, and maybe it will be. And I always say there is no necessity to have large galleries. It's just a question of an opportunity. And I don't think you need to be a great gallery with multiple spaces. And I did it over many years. It was almost a natural move. I don't think it was a kind of move larger than life. It just happened. I don't know how. And I'm happy to run these spaces. I, went into, people were very concerned when we opened in Pantin, which is on the périphérique, which is not a place where Parisians like to go. When I sent this out to my French collectors, they really said, excuse me, where is this? And but it became a success because, again, I was really hoping I would find an audience, maybe not the audience I do have in the Marais, but maybe, and today I think we just finished another year, we had more than 20,000 visitors only in this space, and it's a trip. You have to really go. There's nothing else you can do there. You just go there, see an exhibition, go back to the city. And what I realized is we do have this audience today. People are really doing the extra mile to see a great exhibition. And I think, the reason that I'm going to London, I'm asked all the time. We found a beautiful space on Dover Street. It's 1,600 square meter over several floors in the heart of Mayfair. And again, it's absolutely not necessary. And sometimes I wake up and say, why did I do it? Why do I need it? And we don't need it. But as long as it's fun, as long as it's challenging, as long as it's really getting your artist excited about something, about a new space, about a new city, I think we can do it. But I think size doesn't really define a great gallery, and I really want to say this here because the press likes to kind of create this kind of idea of big galleries, multiple spaces. I would have never, if somebody would have 10 years ago told me that I'm operating now 11,000 square meter, I say, wow, this is really absolutely mad and crazy. And it is maybe. But it is possible, and again, not necessary. And this is really my message here, because you just do whatever you feel you do best for your artist. I don't know how we ended up in the situation today that galleries are now, in my team we have 100 people. And again, I don't think it's necessary. It's necessary for the structure I built, but not to run an incredible space. But if we're doing 30 exhibitions per year, so of course you need a certain number of people working on them. I always say we need 1/3 of the people working in content. So 30 people are really working in content, which means they are in research, they are preparing the catalogs. We're having around 20 to 25 books and catalogs we produce per year. They work with the artists, so they're artist minders. They're working with the collectors. I believe very much in some of my colleagues, have sale and artist minding in different departments. I feel it is incredibly important, and the people who work with the artist are also the ones who sell the work. They know the most about the artist. They know the most about this upcoming exhibition. And when we go into these meetings and, the person who is in charge of the exhibition tells us, all this experience of all the kind of problems, on the way to these exhibitions, all the discussion you had with the artist, you can really learn the most. If this would be different people, I think it's a different model. I don't want to criticize, who decides other, but for me it works the best. I think that to be as close to the artist studio and to have the people who really work as close within the team are the one also who defend the exhibition, who also are involved in placing the works and carefully, together with all these colleagues decide where it should go. So I think it is such a joint effort, a gallery, if it's smaller, medium size, or very large. But at the end of the day, it's all about the artist. And my big fear is always to lose the trust of the artist. I always try to spend as much time as possible with them. And this is not easy, It's, sometimes I come in the morning and I see the schedule of the day and I see just one kind of meeting after the other. And then I say, well, which meetings today are really closer to the work? Because I always make it a rule for myself that I don't want to let a day go by that we are not really about talking and working and being creative about what we are here for. And I think this is what it really needs to, and you all, and we all know this very well. I think, and this is what I want to say, things have not changed so much, you know. We have today social media, we have Instagram, we're all very proud of our Instagram accounts, and it amuses me when I open in the morning, they see, of course, a picture, and I learn from my own account, because then somebody does it, and I see, aha, we're here now, you know, they're installing in Paris. I saw it this morning on my Instagram, and I said, okay, great, this is the next opening, this is where, oh, this I don't like, I can call and say, can you change this? No. But it doesn't change our business. I don't think so. But please, let's discuss this. Maybe you will be differently in your opinion. At the end of the day, the internet doesn't sell art. This is what I want to just put onto this podium to discuss eventually. I think I still believe very much into the gallery spaces, and please forgive me, Victoria. I really think we should not do our business at art fairs. I think we should really believe in the gallery, and we do the utmost effort to make the perfect space. You know, we think about the floor, we think about the wall space, we think of the height, we think about the light. Everything has to be perfect. And we think with the artist carefully about every exhibition. It's really planned, and the artist has the model in his studio or the plans, and he delivers, you know, works of art for the space. I think we have to invite the main part of our collectors and our audience into this situation of the gallery. The art fairs are wonderful, and you know, I'm participating on many of them, and we do good business there. But I always say 75% of our activity and of our business has to be in the gallery. We cannot have art fairs taking this over. Art fairs are here to connect, to, you know, it's incredibly efficient to go to London or New York or Miami or Hong Kong and to connect with the local art community. And it would be impossible to, you know, have the efficiency of our work if we would not have art fairs. So they are incredibly important. But I think we should not forget that the original idea is the gallery, and this gallery space is the one who defines our work. And this is where the artist is the closest to, you know. Of course, many artists produce art for art fairs, but I think the main thought of an artist is still in the gallery space. So I think this is something we should nurture. We should really put in the center of our activity, and we should make sure that our audience doesn't get lazy and just asks, where is the next art fair we are participating to meet there and to look at an art there. And sometimes I refuse to send a work to an art fair, and I insist that the collector come to Paris or soon to London or to Salzburg to see the art, because nothing can, you know, take away the atmosphere of a gallery space. And I find this is something, it should be more part of our thinking and our discussions, how we can make sure that we are not losing our audience to a kind of world circus of art fairs and events, and to bring them back to our space. It must be difficult if you're maybe not in one of the centers of the world. But my Salzburg experience is not so bad, because it's a very small town, and you have to really make sure that people are able to go there. But if you try to create an event which they feel they're really missing, because they're having an experience with the artist in person, in a space which is totally defined for it, and it's a unique experience, then you can make people move. And we have learned also that, you know, this is part of this incredible 21st century. People are moving faster, and they're more willing to move than ever before. So I think as much as we should use the art fairs and any other great art event around the world, as more we should make sure that we keep the soul of our core business in our spaces of the gallery. And I think time should not take this incredibly precious good from us. Well, I don't know. I didn't really prepare so much, and Gina said I should speak 45 minutes. I don't know how long this was, but maybe we can. This is good. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that extremely interesting description of how you went from being a small intern in Voices Studio to now the mega gallerist that you've become. We're going to open to questions, but I'm going to start just with one question, which is my own, which is a little bit oriented because I come from the United Kingdom. You moved to London just before, you made the decision to move just before the vote came for Brexit. And I just wondered, what was your reaction to that?
Well, of course, I was shocked and sad about, the British to decide to leave Europe, because I'm staunchly European, not because I'm born European, but also I believe in this European idea. And the good thing is that in the art world, we are living on our own continent in any case. So I think the art world has left this idea of borders. So I'm excited to go to London. I did not doubt for a second not to do it. I think also business-wise it will not change so much. I believe London is the quintessential art town in Europe. But I'm very sad that we are going into a situation where London feels not part of this idea of a united Europe.
Thank you. I want to open to questions now. Please put your hands up. And can you please wait for the microphone because we're being recorded. There's one question over there. I can see a hand.
Hi. First of all, thank you, Thaddaeus. That was amazing to hear your whole story, which I've been in the art world for a long time. I work as an art advisor, and I actually did not know that your history. So I loved hearing that. Also, I agree with you about art fairs. Sorry, Victoria. I love art fairs for a certain purpose, but not for clients that are building collections. So I agree with you there. My question is, when you have 100 people working for you, and you have all these spaces around the world, and surely your insurance and shipping and all of these things start to become massive overhead, how do you balance like maintaining connoisseurship, like looking for artists purely out of your Joseph Beuys love, where he's going to give you a show of drawings that don't sell? And does that shift now where you feel obligated to work with artists who are going to sell a lot to keep your, do you feel like your overhead dictates any part of your business?
Yes, well, I have to say...
It's not working.
Well, it's a good question, because of course this is always my fear also, that size kind of changes the way you give yourself enough time to look at art. And I have to say, today we do have people who kind of do this within our team. We discuss everything together. We have scouts who kind of go around and say, I always say that it's very important for a gallery, never lose the contact to the next generation of artists. And I always make it a rule that we have to introduce a new artist, new means really new, to our program, to our collectors, at least every 2 years. When you have a gallery for more than 30 years, you have a big group of artists you're working with, so you cannot constantly introduce a new artist, because then, I would have 150 artists now to represent, and with the 60s we already have a lot. But for instance, the way we will open London now, we open with 4 exhibitions because the building is rather large. And one exhibition is a young British artist. His name is Oliver Beer, who is made an incredible career in a very, very short time. He just has a show for young artists at the Centre Pompidou in Paris. And we followed him from the very beginning. Somebody pointed him out to me at the Biennale de Lyon in France, like 4 years ago. I went there, I saw it, and I met him, and we started to work together. We had a show in Paris, and he would be one of the really important shows now for our first London opening. So, of course, we try to be as close as possible to art production, to see what artists are doing today. Sadly, I cannot spend so much time to go to studios. I do it as much as I can. And but I think I have also great people in my team who are really out there and who bring back their ideas and their contacts to artists. And like this, we kind of make sure that we don't lose. But it's a big fear. I think, I always feel this is my midlife crisis, to feel I lose this feeling for the next generation. And I don't get it anymore. I think it's a big fear.
Next question. There's a question over there.
Thank you, Thaddeus. Thank you. Melanie Gerlis from the FT and the Art newspaper. I just wondered, it's sort of a follow-on to Lisa's question, but I agree when you talk about, at the end of the day, it's the artist that we need on his own or her own in the studio. Isn't possibly one of the problems that there's never going to be enough masterpieces or masterful artists to fill the demand that has grown around the world for art, and that either that the world has to contract a bit so that it is masterpieces? I mean, how do you see, how are we going to fill the walls with enough masterpieces?
That's a tricky question. Yes, I do agree. I think, the interest in art became so tremendous, and I think this explains all the very high prices. I think the interest became so much bigger. There's so many more collectors kind of growing into this world. And you're absolutely right, and I agree with this. Artists don't grow in the same capacity than their collectors in demand now. One of the reactions, and the question is it a good one, is that artists are now paid incredible amounts for works which are outstanding. We are working with this young Romanian artist, Adrian Geni, and it is an incredibly unhealthy and very complicated situation where, this artist, I always say it's an artist who is producing for the next 40 years, hopefully. He's in his 30s now. And at auctions now, people are willing to pay $10 million for a painting by this artist. So how do we do this as a gallery? How do we make sure that we are selling to the right places? And of course, museums are always the one place where we feel this art has the best place to stay and to grow. But this is one of the reactions. The market is so big, and masterpieces are just not growing on the tree outside this building here. And artists are not coming. There are many more artists than we had also in former times, but not that many, not enough to kind of go with the. I don't have an answer for this actually, because I think, if the high price is the only answer we can offer, it's a very kind of simple answer we are offering, and maybe we will have to think about a bit more complex answer to this.
Next question here in the front.
Hello, Susan Mumford from the Association of Women Art Dealers. My question is picking up on what you were talking about in terms of the art fairs not being the only place, obviously, that you do the business, that you show the art, that you take people back to the gallery. So then, what are some successful models that you're seeing with, say, gallerists who are up and coming? They might even be 10 years into their careers, but they simply cannot afford the spaces in the big city centres. They have the concepts. 30 years ago, they could have absolutely put on a programme. What do they do today? What have you seen to work successfully? Thank you.
Also a difficult question, because I say it's easy to say, if you're in Paris or London, then you have some interesting artists, people find you. I also think that art fairs alone are not the answers. If we think, let's just go to every art fair possible, then we will find our way. And I was in a committee in Austria, in Vienna, regarding Eastern European galleries, kind of trying to come into the market. Vienna is a gate to Europe. Vienna established an art fair specializing, which I also think was a very good idea, because when Vienna was trying to create an art fair, they also came to us and said, we need you. And I said to them, you don't need me on this, because you don't need another art fair where you have the same galleries with the same artists like you find in every other place. But if you try to create a place where you concentrate on a very specific region and give these galleries a kind of gateway to a bigger audience. But it's not the answer to your question. It's, if the art fairs are definitely important, and not only the very large one where everybody wants to participate. I really believe also in the smaller ones. And Vienna is a very, very good example because it's a big success. And when I think of Adrian Geni, the artist I just spoke about, his first way to be noticed to the West was in Vienna at the art fair. The gallery from Romania came to Vienna, showed this artist there, and then he was discovered. So I think regional exhibitions and art fairs do have a very important role. And for a new gallery to try to show their artist, I guess this is still one of the platforms which is important. But I guess it must be difficult because, back in the 1980s when I started, and I started from this very small place in Austria. Today we do have so many more small places than back then, Back then the art market was defined in a few cities, and then when you had when you came from an obscure place like I did, it was always interesting because you said, oh my God, he's from Salzburg, where is this? So today it doesn't exist anymore because there's so many of these small places existing because everything is on the map, which is good because, in the 80s we only defined the art market in America and Europe. And Europe were like 10 cities and America was New York. And everything else was ignored, There was hardly anything in Latin America. Asia, of course, didn't exist. Today, we added every corner of this planet to our awareness. So in a way, it's an incredible time because we are really now looking into artists from, I remember when we started in Paris to look at artists in Iran. So I sent somebody from our team and said, go to Tehran and you will find your way because I feel something might come out of it. We did some very interesting exhibition and we're working with 2 artists from Tehran since then in our program. So we added every possible corner, even places which are very difficult to have access politically because, it was not easy, to get art out of Iran. And some of the artists had terrible problems to go back because they got noticed in Paris more than they wished in their own country. So you always have to think about, places where politically they have limitations and it's not easy for them to get out of their way with their views. And then, of course, we invite them to Paris. We think we do the best for them. But then afterwards, we realized how much troubles they had, in their own country. So each situation is so different, and I'm sure it's very difficult to kind of for a new gallery to kind of get their artists to the big stage, to the awareness, and it's many steps. I think we are also spoiled today of expecting everything very fast. Back then, and I don't want to constantly go back, but it just we allowed ourselves a bit more time, and for the artist, for the gallery, for the development of a career, it didn't need to be immediate. Today, if a young artist comes out of college and starts his beginning in the art world, if he's not successful within 3 years, he thinks he's a failure. And I think we have to change this. This is a pressure which is unrealistic and unhealthy.
Hi, my name is Mariam. I come from Tehran, Iran, and I know the 2 artists with whom you work, and I appreciate what you do, really, and I'm very glad that I'm here listening to your speech. I was wondering, since you gave some explanation about your experience in Austria, in Salzburg, what are your strategies in making new or building new collectors and new audiences? If you may answer. Thank you.
Of course, a very important question. The most important today by building new collectors is to build really connoisseurs and not investors. I think this is really a situation which is new. It didn't really exist before, or maybe I wouldn't say it didn't because maybe we find another Renaissance painter who kind of had investors who only were trying to resell the work. But I think it's really a phenomenon which is part of the last 15 years where art is really became a commodity, and it's really purely bought to resell within a limited period of time with a profit. This almost was very limited as a phenomenon 30 years ago, because art was not possible to make an immediate profit. You know, you invested into an incredible piece of culture, and if you had the right eye, then over a long period, these artists were appreciated and became important. And collectors really allowed themselves this time. They bought something, believing in what the gallery also tried to tell them, and they opened a world to them and invited them into this world. And today we have to really make this distinction between people who come to you in a gallery or in an art fair, and they might be very enthusiastic, but I have to say, and we have a kind of good gut feeling for this, you almost smell the investor, and you still do. Of course, their skill might become more sophisticated, and then it would be more difficult to identify them. But I have the feeling, if you spend time with people who are interested in acquiring art, you can see and you can feel and you can detect the motivation. And our aim, and I think this is really an incredible group of colleagues here, should be really to nurture the connoisseur, to nurture the people who are really interested in the content of the work, to start a relationship with the gallery, with the artist who are interested long term, to follow an artist. And we have to avoid that too many works which we are placing, and I always use this word, I'm not saying selling, and I always say within my team, we are placing art. The artists trust us, they are most valid good into your hands, and we are not just here to sell a piece of art, we are here to place it. We find a place for this piece of art. And I think this is really one of the great challenges of the future, to build connoisseurship and collectors who believe in the cultural content. And of course, we cannot be naive, and people spending a lot of money. So we cannot say, you spent, I don't know, 500,000 euros and just believe in the cultural value of the piece. We are responsible towards a kind of monetary value of it. So we cannot have people believe they spend whatever they spend, and if it's gone, well, they believed in a great cultural idea. I think our responsibility is also towards the money which is spent, but not to the investment and not to the value. We are not responsible that they make profit. I always say we are not. When collectors call after 2 years and said, "Excuse me, I bought this painting from you, it didn't kind of appreciate in value," and then I said, "Did I guarantee this to you?" We are not here to guarantee a profit.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a little bit more practically? How do you build this? How do you turn an investor into
Well, I have to say, I'm not so missionary. I have not tried to turn an investor into a collector, because I think this is a big target. We're trying more to build collectors, out of different grounds, and to be very carefully that we are selling to the right places. And I think we really kind of have also within our team, we're really talking about this a lot, and I think we are trying to find ways what to do to increase, the pleasure for a collector to become a collector and not an investor. And, of course, people always speak about the blacklists, and I have to say they do exist. Yes, they have to exist. I'm sorry, I really say this very openly. But of course, I'm speaking here, with a group of colleagues. But we need to have these blacklists. When I see how irresponsible some collectors buy a piece of art and put it into auction within, I don't know, 1 or 2 or 3 years, I'm sorry, this person cannot purchase another piece of art from us. And I say this very open. I know I'm not allowed to it. It's against the, but, and I'm sorry, Victoria, because, because of course the art fairs also made things move so fast, and you have fewer times to screen somebody, You stand in Basel at the opening and you are like bombarded with a a group of people who just run to your space and you want to buy something, and we have to stop ourselves doing this in this speed. We have to, and people say it's very bad manners that we send out our artworks before to certain collectors before we open an art fair, but we do this. We just do this. We make sure that the works we show already have a certain filter, and we know more or less to whom we want to sell it. We don't stand at an art fair and wait the first person who walks up to us to buy a piece of art. Within my team, I don't allow this.
We had a question over here.
Oh, hi, Thaddeus. I'm Adam Sheffer. I am a partner at Chime & Reed. I've been there for 15 years, and I'm president of the Art Dealers Association of America. And I know that we've known each other for almost 30 years now. I'm very interested because I was mentored many, many years ago by Mary Boone, very much in this hierarchy of the Castelli model. And I remember when you opened your gallery, you did this extraordinary exhibition called The Silent Baroque with a very sumptuous catalog, and it was really a museum quality exhibition. And one thing that struck me about that is how well you in particular collaborated with so many different galleries around the world to put this together, and dealing with the artists and dealing with other dealers, and everyone was very welcome to be a part of the success of this exhibition in your gallery. My question is, in a day of sort of this quote-unquote mega galleries where people are trying to assume total control for an artist's career, etc., do you think it's possible to have the same kind of collaborative exhibition and have it as successfully as you did back then in this era?
I think it is possible, but I think it is easier possible in a kind of younger group of colleagues, I would not know if we would be able to do something like this now. I don't know if it's our aim also, I have to say. I think, but it should be possible when younger galleries get together and make a joint effort. I think so. I think it has not changed, and I sometimes see this. I think things have not changed so much. I think when you see younger galleries creating a new art fair like in New York, and it's really gallery driven, so by invitation. And I like this. I like the idea that colleagues get together and say, you know what, we don't like this model so much, let's do our own. And we only invite who we like and who are part of a certain vision. So I think it does exist today as much as it did back then. But of course, if you grow and you stay with your artist and you have a kind of strong competition, and you do this for many years, I think it becomes maybe a little bit less appealing to kind of do this. Or maybe it's appealing, but I don't even think about it so much. I think you just do your program, you represent your artist, you work for the estates, and it's like it's a different work. This is true, yeah. But I like the idea of, but I think it's a great model for younger. I was much younger then, and it was much easier to do.
We had another question over here.
Hi, Lisa. Schiff again, sorry. I actually just wanted to ask you some advice. So working as an advisor, I have had my company now 15 years, and I started with a group of collectors who started from scratch, and we built amazing collections. And over that time, the art world has grown immensely. They have filled their walls, they're on the boards, their storage is full, and they want to keep collecting. And now we're at this place where we either need to sell some things to keep moving it. So, part of the problem also is the supply in terms of placement and reselling. Because now, it used to be you would buy one or two things every few years and you had them for your entire life. But now if you become a collector and you get quite engaged in it and you want to keep engaging in it, how do you keep going without selling?
I never would say that I'm totally against selling. I think, this is absolutely not. But exactly like you describe it, I think we do sit down with collectors, which we have also worked with for many years. And they have grown away from certain artists. They have changed the direction of their collection. And sometimes it's necessary to kind of sell works. I'm absolutely not against it. I think otherwise we have not the chance of correction. We don't have the chance the chance of change. So, but it has to be, but those are different motivations. I only speak about the motivation of a sale. If you're talking about collectors who are really nurtured by you and by the art world, and they have really their own vision, they have followed artists over many years, they are on boards of museums, those are our ideal collectors, you know, who do have to have the right to sell some works. I'm talking, what we want to avoid is the pure investor, somebody who just jumps on the on this energy of the art world purely to make a profit within a short period of time. It's a big difference, but I'm never against selling. You know, I'm having my own collection and I'm very ambitious with my collection, and I don't need to sometimes sell from my collection, either to replace it by a more important work I can find. So this is actually a very important part of a collection. It has to be lively. You cannot be stuck with a collection. You cannot have the feeling, and we cannot give this feeling to our collectors that whatever they buy, never sell, because otherwise you will be charged. You know. So I think this selection project of kind of, you know, making a collection by also having to sell is very important, and we have to be there to help a collector to go through this.
Next question. There's one at the back here.
Hello. First of all, thanks a lot for this motivational and inspiring keynote. My name is Henrik Sprengel. I live in Barcelona, and I've created an artist residency and a gallery space together with my brother and a partner about 2.5 years ago. And our business model is based on two things. First is to build up a collection on the artists that we have, and then to function as a normal gallery space. Now, I think that since the beginning, we have somewhat managed to create quite a good quality of artists. For the Artist in Residence program, we work together with the Artist Pension Trust. We also try to get local talent, and at the end of the day, we struggle. We struggle because we don't have enough collectors. Maybe it's a typical problem of Barcelona. Maybe it's a problem that we, as you say, need to have more patience. And my question would be also for advice. Is it that we need to move somewhere else? Is it that we need to maybe get a different type of artists, mid-career artists or high artists? Or is it that I maybe need to have an internship with Baselitz and get the same sort of luck as you did with boys? Or is there maybe anything that might motivate us to continue, because that's our intention?
Well, you have to believe in your artist. So I think to change the artist is definitely no solution. You know, you started this, and I don't know your program, but it sounds very exciting. I think if you believe in these artists and you think those are the artists who are really part of our incredible community of vision, then maybe you just need some more patience. I do not know much about Barcelona. I had the most incredible day yesterday. I haven't been here there since the museum opened, I have to say. And when I heard it was 95, I said, I can't believe I can ignore such a great city for so long. But it seems a very driving place here. It seems it has infrastructure, it has galleries, it has incredible museums and art spaces. So maybe patience is definitely one thing which I think we're lacking a lot, that we have to stick in there. Of course, if you are able to widen the horizon and to add maybe some artists, which may be then a way to kind of make this work better, you know, by, I don't know how many artists you represent and how many artists are from here, local artists, and how many you invite from outside, to kind of open the dialogue maybe bigger and to get through the fact that you have an artist who lives in Paris or an artist from Germany, to kind of, this alone would maybe start a dialogue with a different group of collectors. Because sometimes when you bring in another artist, just the pure fact that he's from another city and another country, he brings in also his own group of collectors and followers and critics and curators. And people from outside are starting to notice your work here, because it's not only about selling, because selling is a consequence of other great works, and you have to get noticed not only by the local community but by kind of national community, but also by the international. And the art world is the best way to connect internationally, because, as I say, we live on our own continent, and Germany is as close to Barcelona as Paris is, and maybe to kind of build these strings of international contacts by artists and by the audience they bringing back to your own orbit. I think this maybe was something I kind of profited a lot back then when I started. And you know, the 80s, as glorious they sound today, as difficult they were, because we had, you know, I always was thinking in the first almost 10 years of my work that if I can make it another 2 months, then, you know, it might work. And there were always these other 2 months I was planning and thinking I can survive another 2 months. And even when I opened Paris, and, you know, I was hardly 30 and I had this beautiful space in the Marais, the art market went into this big depression in 91, and I just had opened, overextended myself. And then I said, oh my God, these other 2 months will never stop.
Next question, there's one at the back.
Hello, thank you for your speech. My name is Anya. I'm an independent curator from Serbia. I would like to link 2 things that you spoke about. One of them is the East European galleries in Vienna, that it's kind of like a gateway for this region, and also the building connoisseurs and not investors. I would just like to ask you, what would be a model for building connoisseurs in this region? Because I find it very challenging, also from the fact that it's not a history that we know, and not a lot of people know the history of the East European art. We've seen some big exhibitions such as Promises of the Past at the Centre Pompidou, and the East European art tends to go more in the like 70s, 80s with Marina Abramovic and the avant-garde, but not the current situation. I was in Art Basel, Miami Beach, and there was a project by a Serbian artist living in Chicago that involved candies that we had during Yugoslavia coming from Croatia. And that was basically the only type of candy you could buy at the time. Of course, during communism, you don't have an array of products like you have during capitalism. And it's enough to just see Goodbye Lenin as a film to know this. But the gallerist that was explaining me the project was shocked when I told him this. So if at an art fair such as Art Basel Miami Beach, there's a gallerist telling me about the work of a Serbian artist living in Chicago, and he doesn't know this, so then I don't know how we're building this connoisseurship with, you know, through the galleries. Thank you.
Yeah, well, this is, of course, a very challenging question, because, of course, we have so many regions which do feel disconnected. And I think we have gone a long way in the last couple of years to connect all these countries. But it is a very ambitious master plan, you know, to kind of embrace the entire world and to see how this one continent, you know, the art world, kind of really grows together. And I think Eastern Europe is a very good example, because when the Iron Curtain fell, you know, it was really a world on its own which was totally disconnected. And I have to say, and I'm not very often in Vienna, it's not a city I'm very connected with, but I feel Vienna did a very good by kind of not only opening this art fair to these Eastern galleries, but also doing a lot of you know, get together and colloques and you know, meetings like this here to open to Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia. And I've spoken just by pure chance, because I was invited to some panels like this one here at the art fair there, and I've spoken to many colleagues from this country. And when I started to go to Cluj in Romania, you know, which was this kind of enclave of interesting artists, totally disconnected. They didn't know how to run a gallery, to run an art space, to promote their artist, you know. Of course, Cluj is maybe the biggest success we have because some of these artists became, you know, this very well-known, very famous artist. But it's also an incredible model because somehow it's this kind of very faraway place in Romania, and but it had an incredibly determined group of artists, curators, and one or two galleries. They wanted to make their work to be known. And when I hear these stories, how, you know, they rented together a small truck which broke down on the way to Vienna to show the first time, and it was a joint effort between the curators, the artist, and the gallerist, and they all went to Vienna. They all went in the same truck, and they just wanted to put themselves on the map, and they succeeded. Maybe many more other places in Eastern Europe tried the same and didn't succeed as well as Cluj did. But I think it's an incredible example. And also what I like so much is this joint effort. It was really the artists themselves. They were kind of putting their works onto the wall and building the walls there because they didn't want to spare any other costs. So in a way, I think the gate is wide open. I think the art world is welcoming at the moment every possible corner of this planet. And there's almost a curiosity. The more obscure a place might sound, the more interesting it will be. So I think we haven't had an open situation as strong, as much as we do have now. So I think joint efforts in certain areas are really, you know, a great example. I think the Cluj model is, for me, you know, I'm surprised at the number of books written about the Cluj success and how it started with a handful of people. And I have to say, what is important, critics, curators, gallerists, and artists. It was this joint effort. It was not only somebody who had the idea to have a gallery and to believe in some local artist and take them to Vienna. It was really, they had the, it was very content driven, you know. It was really, you know, when I met the critic of the local Cluj newspaper, and this was some years ago, not now where we all talk about it, when I went the first time, I was amazed, you know, how sophisticated these people were and how, and then they showed me this publication they started to do in 2005, long before we even know how to spell Cluj. And I think, you know, this is, you know, an example for how it could work, especially in Eastern Europe.
Next question. While you're mulling your questions, I have another one for you. Tomorrow, America, would you ever move to extend your gallery?
No, I always say, you know, I believe very much in natural growth. So for me, London is a big step. I'm very happy that we do London. No further plans.
Is that a promise?
No, not a promise, but it's really, it's just where I stay.
There's a question over there. Sorry, I saw a hand go up, but perhaps somebody was just adjusting their hair. Was there a question over there? There's a question here.
Thank you for your speech. Listening to you, I am Josep Sarle from Andorra, Galerie of Art, Pilar Riberaigua. Listening to you, it seems that if you make the link between a good artist and a collector, that will work. But maybe, probably you have experiences when you know a good artist and this recognition doesn't come. So there must be something else. What are other factors making an artist to be recognized, but curators? I personally know artists who I appreciate, but they are not recognized as they should be. So what's the secret?
Good question. you know, when I spoke to Leo Castelli, he always said to me, you know, artists, as good as they are, they not automatically have their recognition. Even if a Leo Castelli is behind it. And he always gave me an example on his own. He believed in a German artist. Her name was Hanne Darboven, you know, very conceptual. And he showed her for 40 years. He never could make her recognized. In my own experience, I worked with an American artist. Her name was Hélène Sturtevant. You know, she kind of invented appropriation in an interesting way. We did several exhibitions in Paris, in Salzburg. We were not able to make her recognized. She passed away a couple of years ago. Now the work's selling for millions at auction. She has a retrospective at MoMA, which unfortunately she was not alive anymore. There is no explanation for this, but it's absolutely a fact. You can be a powerful gallery, you can be the most important critic and curator, and also Hans-Ulrich Obrist will always speak about this. He says to me, there are certain artists he 100% believes in. He said he's not able to make this artist, you know, be recognized by his colleagues as curators, by gallerists, by the art world, and he still believes in it. We do have to believe in artists we believe in, and you know, nobody would have stopped me to show again Hélène Sturtevant. We have done 12 exhibitions. 10 of them were total failures in terms of recognition and sale. But today she is really in an incredible position. Unfortunately, she passed away before having this big recognition. But she kind of, it was coming, so she kind of knew at the end of her life that, you know, she has arrived in the art world. But there is no explanation for this. But it's a fact, and we just have to stick to our beliefs.
Next question. Have you got any more questions?
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Andrei. I run a gallery in Bucharest together with my partner, Raluca. I wanted to ask you about the growing inequalities in the arts market that everybody sees, and how a lot of artists are representing a large part, if not the vast majority, of sales and value now. And also, how do you see, you know, artists like precisely Adrian Guénier being very successful in auction houses, but many people commenting that he doesn't have such a, let's say, good career institutionally, and how would you address that as well?
Well, of course, I have to protest this largely, and you will be hearing very shortly about the very important tour of museum exhibitions of Adrian Guénier, we're just working on. I think he's one of the most gifted painters of our time. I believe, of course, he's one of the artists I work with, so for me, I have to say this, but I do believe this. And what I feel is really so upsetting in the situation with Adrian is that there's a pressure put on him absolutely against his will. He's not a career person. He absolutely didn't want this situation. We didn't want this situation. You know, his galleries who work with him, and I'm sure you agree with me. It's a situation we almost cannot control. I think in my 30 years in this business, I never had experienced a similar case in Adrian Guénier, which kind of went so much out of control. And I always say to everybody, I say, this, you know, when we have this, we have a waiting list of 200 people, which we don't take serious. We know exactly where we're selling every painting he gives us at the moment, you know. Actually, you know, and I always say, he will paint another 40 years. How can this career evolve, knowing and hoping this artist will give us, you know, great artworks for another 40 years? If this pressure is here now, we only can hope of a soft landing. And this brings back to Lisa's questions about, you know, we do not have enough of this incredible, outstanding artist, and therefore the market reacts so out of control, because the number of collectors moving into the market is so large that this is one of the ways to do it. I think it's a little wrong way. We do not have a better answer, and especially we, who are really working closely with these artists, don't have a better way to control it. The only way for us now to control it is that we will be so restrictive with any painting which will kind of leave the studio, by making sure that it goes to the right hands, that this soft landing is just done out of control, you know. And but I do not believe that somebody like Adrian takes away from the of this massive money which is spent on his art, that it would take away from somebody else. This I totally disagree. I think the market is growing so fast, the participants are so many, that the fact that so much money is spent with one artist on the secondary market doesn't restrict from another artist.
I'm going to take the last question, if anyone else has a question. There's one right at the back there. I saw a hand go up. Can you please speak into the microphone? We can't hear you very well. It's on its way.
Thank you. My name is Carolina. I'm from Galerie in Barcelona. I just was wondering if you could comment a bit more about how you talked about your galleries versus art fairs. The idea, at least in my opinion, or how I view it, is kind of the gallery is sort of a space where the artists have their exhibitions, and there's exhibits each X number of times, and then a gallery or a fair is kind of a way to extend that and make it international, and maybe show works that can't be shown during the time that there's an exhibit happening in the gallery, and be able to kind of take that out into a more international level. And I just wanted you to comment on that. Like, why do you feel that it's more important to, or not so important, the art fairs, and to give more importance?
Okay, yeah, it's important that you ask this, because I don't want to be misunderstood here. I think the art fairs are very important, but they're important to connect between people, to, exchange information, to sell art, of course. But they don't, replace the exhibitions. And sometimes I have the feeling when I speak to young colleagues that the art fairs are becoming so important that they are starting to replace the exhibitions and the gallery space. And this, I'm fiercely against it, because I think the gallery situation is the one which we create for an artist. We put every effort into our gallery space. We think about every detail. They have to be absolutely perfect. And an art fair, we are accepting any imperfection, because an art fair cannot give you the perfect space. They're crappy floors and walls, and I'm sorry, Victoria.
Victoria, sorry.
No, they're wonderful, but they cannot replace the space in the gallery. I'm sorry. And the artist, does an artist think of an art fair when he does an art piece? I hope not. He thinks of the gallery situation. Out of 30 years of experience, I go to an artist studio, and I'm always proud when I see the model of my different galleries in the studio. And when the artist thinks, and I'm saying, I'm doing a painting in this size, and I'm doing a sculpture, as I put there, and then he changes, and he thinks for a year about this, and he moves. Every visit he changes, and he says, no, I will put this here. So can you imagine all the thought an artist puts into a space? We cannot ignore this situation, and it's a privilege for us that an artist has for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 months your space in his studio, and he concentrates to produce art for this specific space. It's a privilege. I tell you, I love it when I see this, and the art fair is a wonderful place to kind of make your gallery known, make your artist known, but it's an exchange of information, and we should really treat it this way. We should do the best, we should make the best booth possible, we should have our artists look the best possible in art fair, but it doesn't replace an exhibition, and it does not replace your gallery.
Well, I think that's a wonderful way to finish. Sorry, Victoria. How many art fairs do you do a year?
We do the major
main
ones,
yes.
I think
so
7 or 8. Yeah.
You are
committed.
committed.
I love them, please.
Despite that. So I'd like to thank Thaddaeus very much for coming, giving us such an interesting talk, and many thanks for your also excellent questions. We're now going to take a break of how long? Half an hour. We have now a half an hour break, so please come back here in half an hour. The coffee is up. Yes, you go up, just follow the crowd. Please don't leave anything here that's precious. It's best to take anything, computers with you, please. Thank you so much.